Good afternoon. I'm Dan Tupper, District 3 Commissioner and President of the Board. This is the regular meeting of the Jefferson County PUD Board of Commissioners. It is Tuesday, September 7th, 2021. It is 5 p.m. By the direction of the PUD Board of Commissioners and in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Jefferson County PUD is no longer providing an in-person room for meetings of the BOC. All meetings will be held remotely via Zoom. Participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak. If you are calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise your hand to request to speak. So we will move on to the agenda review. I would ask for commissioner intros to confirm we have a quorum.
Kenneth Collins, Commissioner, District 2.
Jeff Randall, Commissioner, District 1.
Thank you, gentlemen. So we have an agenda. I noticed we have an executive session on the agenda today as well. Additions or corrections? Anyone?
Dan?
Staff? Go ahead. Kevin.
I'd like to make a correction on the agenda under manager's report. We have 5.3 where will go over some possible changes or some ideas that staff has put together for future meetings. So that will happen at 5.3.
So you want to add 5.3 communications officer?
Yep. And then at 5.4 would go over a couple calendar issues, starting with the budget meeting on possibly the 14th. But that will be done under manager's report, and that's the only changes I have.
Okay. Anyone else? Seeing and hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the agenda? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Agenda is accepted. Number 3, public comment. The public comment period is for any items not specifically listed on the current agenda or for items listed on the consent agenda. The chair may place time limits on public comments to allow the meeting to be conducted in an efficient and orderly manner. We will do one time per person, 3 minutes each. If you could give your name and service address for the audio, that would be helpful, but it is not mandatory. So with that, I will open up public comment. Again, *6 to mute or unmute. If you're on the phone, raise your hand function. Okay, Jessica Dillon, 3 minutes. Go ahead, Jess. You're still muted.
Let's see. Oh, there
Can you- Can you help her, Will, or is it on her end?
Yeah, she'll have to unmute.
The floor is yours, Jess, if you can get in. There you
Here we
go.
go. Thanks. And thanks for giving me opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Jessica Dillon. I'm the chair of the CAB. I'm not speaking on behalf of the CAB. I'm just speaking on behalf of myself as a customer owner of Jefferson PUD. I was just wondering, I know a lot of organizations have given incentives for employees to go ahead and be vaccinated against the COVID-19 by allowing for an extra day off work after the first shot, maybe an extra 2 days off work after the second shot, so that people don't have to use their vacation time in order to have that time to recover from any side effects from the shot. So I was wondering if the PUD is exploring a program like that, and if not, if that's something that they may be taking under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. So I don't know if staff or legal want to weigh in on this or not. The board has not taken this up. And we don't always necessarily respond. So just for those who might be new, we don't necessarily respond to a question from the public.
I will respond, Dan, that as of yet, we have not offered any incentive to our staff for vaccination. We do not have a plan to in the near future, but all options are open, and Melanie is very responsive to those type of ideas. So we'll look into it, but I'm not sure we would do anything at this time.
Thanks, Kevin. So anyone else for public comment? *6 to mute or unmute, or 9 to raise your hand, or the chat function is also available.
I'm sorry.
not-
I think Bill was looking to make a
Yeah,
comment.
Okay,
I'm waving my
go ahead.
hand.
go
Hi.
ahead, Bill.
Hi, this is Bill County. About 4 years ago, the PUD was talking about raising the rates at Calla Point, which is where I live. The sewer rates. And so there was a meeting held at Calla Point in which I think there was an agreement made. The agreement was that the people here whose septic systems are maintained by the PUD would agree to a raise in their rates, and the PUD in turn agreed to modify their accounting system so they could track the costs at Calla Point and would report back in about a year. To my knowledge, that's never happened. And it seems to me that like 4 or 5 months ago, I may be wrong about this, but it seems to me that there was sort of a commitment made for the PUD to meet with Calla Point people, sewer customers. And I don't know if I wonder if that meeting occurred or not. I'm not aware that it did, but then I'm not one of the customers that would be affected by this rate. So wasn't necessarily be the case that I would know about it.
Is
So
that
that's
your
my-
comments? Is that your comments, Bill?
That's my question.
Thank you. Again, the staff wants to address that. I'm not exactly familiar with that particular meeting, and it's District 2. I don't know if Commissioner Collins was involved with anything like that or not, but again, we don't necessarily respond, so I'll leave it to staff and commissioners if they want to respond to that.
I do have a response, but I'm going to hold it until we get to the discussion of sewer rates.
Oh, dear.
Okay,
I was hoping not to have to hang around for that, but
okay.
I'll
Well-
tell my wife I will have to hang around.
All right, so we will move on to, I see Kevin Camfield has his hand up.
Will you guys be taking public comments during the sewer rate discussion, item 6.1?
We will.
Okay, I'll hold till then.
Thank you. Anyone else? Kevin's hand is still up. If you have the ability to disable that, Kevin, you can go ahead and take your hand down. Anyone else? Not seeing anyone on the list in front of me. I know there are a couple of phone callers. Does anyone look like they're trying to get in on your end, Will?
I don't see anything.
Okay, well, I think I'll close public comment at this time. And as always, we will, if someone was unable to get through, we'll entertain them giving comments later on. If it's something that's not germane to the specific comments, we'll make time somewhere for them to get their comment in. With that, we will move on. I'll close public comment and we will move on to the consent agenda. All matters listed below, excuse me, on the consent agenda are considered under one motion and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on those items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda by a commissioner and will be considered separately. With that, is there anything with consent that we need to address? If not, I would entertain a motion to accept as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to accept the consent agenda as presented. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda is accepted. Consent agenda is accepted. So with that, we will move on to item number 5, manager and staff reports. 5.1, service director arrears report.
That's me. Let me get my screen shared with you guys. Okay, can you see my presentation? Should be looking at the PUD arrears and low income program update.
Yes,
Okay, thank you. So, oh, I seem to be lagging. I'm sorry, guys. All right. At the last regular meeting of the BOC, it was requested that staff bring an update to the board relating to the low income program and the accounts receivable arrears. What we're looking at here, we are seeing a decline in participation. I can only speculate as to the cause at this time. This is in our low income program participation. The numbers for August are preliminary as month-end processes have not run completely yet. Our program specialist, Maureen Whippy, is actively reaching out to our customers, urging them to turn in updated applications. And I don't know if everybody is aware, there was an article in the PDN, which Will did post to our PUD social media. OLICAP is hosting events to get the word out about TRAP assistance. That's the Treasury Rental Assistance Program. And they can also cover up to 1 year of utility arrearages. It was a little bit of short notice, but Maureen will be in attendance tonight in Quilcene and also Thursday at the Tri-Area. She's going to be taking with her assistance information, low income rate applications, and other information that could help folks that are there. And of course, with the decline in participation, the estimated cost of the program for this year will be slightly less than projected in May, somewhere right around 410,000 if we don't get the participation levels back up. This is a 3-year arrears comparison going back to 2018. All arrears, this includes all revenue classes, consumer classes, budget billing, active and inactive accounts. We're looking at the total arrears. And these are the inactive accounts that are shown here are those that have not yet been sent to collections. And it does include budget billing, account settlement balances. And as budget accounts are billed a flat monthly rate based on a 1-year average, at times of the year when consumers use more power than the actual usage revenue is still on the books and aged normally. And this accounts for about 8% of that balance today. So we have a total of 3,325 customers in arrears. 19% of those customers have an arrearage that is at least 90 days past due. I see hands. I'm not sure who went first, Ken or Jeff.
Honor
Jeff, you go
system,
ahead.
gentlemen.
I'll go first. Mine's really pretty simple. What I heard you say, Gene, was that the numbers you're showing do include people who have enrolled or have agreed to a budget payment plan. And what I heard you say is if we excluded those, we would see a drop of about 8% of the.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Gene, I know you said you could only speculate as to the drop in participation in the low-income program. And I'm looking at the chart, and I would ask if you wouldn't mind speculating why there would be a drop of over 150 participants from May to July.
Well, people are not renewing their applications. So, and that could be, maybe they don't have to pay their bill. They're not thinking about it. It could be they got extra assistance, or maybe they're doing they're getting money from elsewhere, or they're making more money on unemployment, so they feel they aren't going to qualify. It could just be forgetfulness. I mean, I've had 2 or 3 people say, oh, I thought we sent that in. And they didn't. And they didn't notice that they weren't getting a credit either. So it could be any number of things.
So I wouldn't ask you to say anything about this at the present moment, but it would be interesting to see if in previous years that what you're describing as a seasonal effect might have occurred.
I can speak a little bit to that. Not to this degree, but we do see from time to time, folks will fall off the program and will get that drop. And then as soon as they see that they're not getting a credit, and it's usually right about the time they start applying for LIHEAP and things like that, we do see that number go back up. But
Okay,
it's not usually this much of a drop.
yeah. Thank you.
Mhm.
So Gene, is Commissioner Tupper. So following up with Ken's same question, did you, I'm assuming you asked OLECAP that same question if they had some insight, I would assume. I mean, they have no idea either. I mean, this is what they do. I would think they would be able to have some outreach or some people that would maybe be able to track down a little bit more about what's going on with the reduction in the number of people putting in.
Well, these are 2 separate programs. So OLECAP, they have some input when it comes to folks who have applied for LIHEAP or rainy day, things like that. There are folks who don't work with OLECAP or St. Vincent de Paul and solely use our low income discount program. And that is what Maureen works on. She's the one that does the renewing of those applications and customer outreach. And she's seeing just, there's groups of people who she just can't seem to get through to. So she has no choice but to remove them from the program. And she then sends them a letter saying, we've removed you, please call, we want to get you back on the program. So it's 2 separate things.
Thanks. So you want to continue on then, or any other questions? I don't see any hands.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next slide. Roughly 6% of PUD accounts have a balance that is at least 30 days in arrears. Of that 19% I mentioned back on the other slide, and you'll see on the left, the number of accounts in arrears, it's a relatively small number compared to the amount, the dollar amount of arrears that's owed. So 320,000 is owed by 627 customers. So it's, when you look at those dollar amounts, it's a bit staggering. And you see that the 30-day arrears, it hasn't changed much over time. There's always going to be folks who just pay their bill late. They get the 30 days, they get the late fee. Oh, shoot, I got to pay my bill. So that hasn't changed much. We're seeing the growth in the 90-day arrears most significantly. So we get to the rough part here. The cutoff moratorium is currently set to expire the 30th of September. We are looking at, well, quite a few. I mean, almost 600 customers at risk of being disconnected. So to be in that group for a residential service, have to have a balance, a past due balance greater than $75. They have to be beyond the end of the 56-day collection cycle. And they have to have no valid assistance voucher or pending appointment. So we're even taking a call, hey, I've got an appointment next month. We'll take them off the list and we'll mark that down and keep them on until they get their appointment. Or they have no valid payment arrangement. That's the other reason they would be shut off. Now, these dollar amounts do differ from what I've shown you in the arrearage reports. And that is simply because I wanted to break out and show you the difference between our commercial class versus our residential. And that is just a snapshot in time. I did this on the 30th, I broke it out, and that is what you're seeing there. Any questions so far? Okay. So our current outreach measures, social media, emails, personal and automatic through our messenger program, robocalls, the automated delinquent notice that goes through our AMS billing at NISC. That's the same letter folks have been getting forever. Then we're doing additional letters and mailings, putting it together with and mailing out to customers who will most likely be affected by that moratorium end. CSRs are making direct phone calls to everybody. And that takes a lot of time. Open communication with assistance agencies. We're talking with OLICAP, St. Vincent de Paul, keeping updated information on the 211 website and our own website, of course. And then newspaper ads. And this is the current ad that is running now. And that is all I've got. Are there any questions? Jeff?
Yes, Jean, thank you. And just speaking for myself, I think the messages you're sending and the different ways you're doing it, including the ad, I think you and Will and whoever else is involved have been really responsive to our concerns. So thank you. So the next question I have is, it looks like our next regular board meeting will be the 21st of September. And I'm presuming that would be, if this moratorium is not extended by the governor, that would be our last opportunity to take any action on this other than what staff would normally do once the moratorium ends, if staff will in fact then start the shutoff process. So I guess my first part of my question is, if we do nothing and the moratorium is not extended, will staff beginning October 1 begin your normal process of shutoff? So that's the first part of the question. And then if you could talk a little bit about, how does that work? Have door hangers already been placed, or will door hangers be placed at that point? Maybe you could just walk us through that.
Yeah, so we're going to do this a little bit differently than we would during non-COVID times. We've ordered special door hangers. All customers who would be getting disconnected will get a door hanger, not just those that we can't reach by phone. And that is because for the last year and a half, folks have been getting the same messages over and over and over, and we want to get their attention. So we'll do door hangers first, phone calls, personal phone calls, emails, robocalls. And I imagine this will take several weeks. And then beginning the disconnect process, that will put us into the standard RCW moratorium, winter moratorium. So we may be looking at different options. We just have to play it by ear. We don't know what stipulations the governor's going to put on the disconnects either.
Anyone else? Question for Jean? Not seeing anything in the chat. Anyone else's hands?
I've got one more, Dan. If Jean could explain how the winter moratorium works. Do customers have to affirmatively request something under that moratorium, or will it just be that we go from the September 30th moratorium to a winter moratorium and there will be no disconnects? Or is that something that customers have to affirmatively request under the
There-
law?
There has to be an affirmation and there's work that goes along with it. So they have to apply to OLICAP. And OLICAP, instead of looking at 1 month's or 4 months of income, they have to look at 1 year's worth of income for that customer. And then they provide us with a number that is 7% of their annual income. And from that, we structure a payment arrangement based on that 7% of income. And they have until October of the following year to get the entire arrearage paid up. If they fail any of those payments throughout that year, then they just only need to catch up on the payments that they missed. There's no, we don't disconnect and have them pay everything. So
But the
Do you wanna-
balance, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Go ahead, Joel.
The balance that is there remains there. It's just you don't disconnect unless they're not paying at all. Is that right?
correct.
Gene, if you could please give us at our next board meeting an update of how many customers are in peril of having their service shut off.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Gene on this particular topic? I am not seeing any hands or anything in the chat. So with that, thank you, Gene. And we will be looking forward to your report next meeting, and we will move on to item 5.2, the Finance Director 2022 Budget Update. Are you there, Mike?
Yes, I'm here. So
I can
just
barely
wanted
hear
to-
you.
Is that better?
That's better.
Okay. So just wanted to give you a quick update. We did get our a draft 22 budget posted to our website yesterday per requirements, since we do have a rate hearing coming up in October. We'll trying to set up a meeting to go over the budget next week with the board. We'll handle that here later on in the manager's reports on with the calendar items. Still subject to change, but we did get something out there. Kevin and I still have to review some of the things in the budget, but just wanted to let the board know that we did get the budget posted to the website. Thanks to Will for getting that taken care of. So, and I know I sent it to the commissioners over the weekend, so you guys have a copy of it. And we can, like I said, it's going to change. Kevin and I haven't had a chance to really sit down and review it. With my training and with him being gone, we didn't get a chance to really go over it. So hopefully by the end of the week, we'll be able to review it. But so that, is there any questions on the budget? Okay, I did have one. Oh, Dan, did you have something?
No, go ahead, Mike.
Hey,
Okay,
Mike.
I did have,
Oh.
yes.
Okay, I'm just gonna circumvent real quick. We would like to have a budget meeting on the 14th. Can we get agreement with the commissioners? It would, the time frame, and Annette can jump in here. The time frame would change. It would be from noon to 2. I'm not sure why Annette sent that out. Is that agreeable to the commissioners? Because part of the next step of the budgeting process is the commissioners get to say, no, this is important, or this is, there needs to be the give and take at the next meeting. So if we could get the 14th from noon to 2 scheduled, that would help us.
Yeah, that works for me. And you're right. The clock's counting down. We have a month before the hearing. So yeah, we need to get some of the meetings in there.
And that time also works for me.
And me also.
Okay, we'll get it posted.
Okay, yeah, so we'll do that for Tuesday, and we'll get an updated one as soon as Kevin and I get a chance to review some of it. This week, we'll get it out to the commissioners. The other thing is not budget related, but I did want to share with you guys that I'm going to do it virtually, but at the American Public Power Association's Business and Finance Conference this year, I'm actually going to be presenting with Moss Adams, with Aaron Tyler and Julie Desmond from Moss Adams in regards to our dashboards and the experience with them. So they've asked me to join them. And so we're going to do a panel discussion about our dashboards and the experience that we had with them at the Business and Finance Conference for American Public Power Association. So that's happening on the 20th. So we just wanted to share that with the commissioners as well.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, and Julie DeSmonte, she gave a presentation at Skamania to what put in it. She's a mover and a shaker. She's definitely, I'd like to hear that presentation myself with you involved with it. So good job on the dashboards. Commissioners, anything else for Mike? All right. Any more questions for Mike? All right, thank you. We will move on to item 5.3. Communications Officer Will, was this the meetings agenda?
Yeah, so there was a request to look at structuring our meetings a little differently so that we weren't blowing past 3 hours and going towards 4 hours as we've been doing a couple times repeatedly. So there's some suggestions also to not stay as late. So I came up with a draft agenda that I shared with the commission. The first recommendation was to start meetings at 4 p.m. as opposed to 5
Hey,
p.m.
Will?
Yep.
Do you have that in a document form that you could put up for people to view? as
I
you're
can,
discussing
yeah.
this?
Hold on one second. So I'll just continue to talk about what's in it, which is that we've got starting the meetings a little bit earlier at 4 o'clock, moving the manager and staff report, let's see, to follow new and old business. And the thinking behind that would be, let's see, we'll go here. Okay, everybody can see now. I'll increase it a little bit. Let's see. Where's the zoom? Sorry, I've got too much on my screen right now. Zoom's down the corner. Is that better? Okay. So you see the beginning is normal, call to order, agenda approval, general public comment, consent agenda. Currently, after following consent agenda, we have the manager and staff report. The suggestion would be to move those after old and new business with the idea that we would try to just prioritize all of the items that are needing a vote, all of the old and new business. That's often what we've got public comment to come in and view and take part in. So we get that done. And then in order to try to stay within a 2 to 2.5 hour range, we'd move the manager and staff reports, the commissioner reports after that, because we can kind of adjust those items on how much we want to include or not include. Those would be more discretionary. And then I would propose adding what I'm going to call additional discussion items. And what happens a lot that ends up taking the most times are these items where they're not a vote, they're not a report. It's just kind of getting some advice on how everybody feels. Sometimes it's essential, sometimes it just takes up a lot of time. And in order to maintain a tighter schedule, I would recommend putting those at the end of the meeting after all of the regular business is done. Suggestions for topics to be added to the additional discussion items could be added in at the agenda review. That could come in any time, but we would know that because they're at the meeting, that we would want to try to keep them brief, or that we'd have extra room to discuss in more depth. And then with the idea that we would try to start any executive session at 6 p.m. and be done by 6:30 in this new format. Of course, things could go longer, but just trying to set it up so that business is prioritized and the kind of more discretionary items were put more towards the end so they don't take up all of the time of the meeting at the beginning. Does that make sense? So that would be the recommendation.
So I guess I'll start off. I will, I would say starting at 4, I'm not opposed to that. And, moving the reports later on, if we were going to start earlier, might make sense. I'm not a proponent of trying to set these time limits when we only meet twice a month at these regular meetings. It takes whatever it takes to get the business accomplished. And just like tonight, this is something that wasn't in the packet. This is something that's adding to the discussion. And we already add additional discussion items like we did tonight, 2 separate parts of the agenda, whether it's during the reports, during old business or new business. So I don't know that we would really need item 9. But even executive sessions, we've had hour-long executive sessions that have been extended multiple times. I don't like the thought of having to be so constrained with this that we're squelching dialogue by commissioners or the public to try and meet artificial time constraints. So I'll start with that.
And I'd like to comment.
Go ahead, Ken.
I participate on 4 different boards in addition to the PUD board. And the other boards all have time constraints for the items on the agenda. They run orderly meetings, and typically they don't wind up with a sense of being constrained that the agenda items are not addressed. So I feel strongly that having a firm time limit and having suggested times allotted for the different business items that we have to cover is an important step towards professionalizing our PUD and for having our meetings go in a orderly and efficient manner. I'm not aware of any board that I've been on other than the PUD that has open-ended meetings where there's no time limit as to when the meetings will end. And I think that has enabled us to often go quite late. And I think at a certain point, when we start pushing 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, our ability to function efficiently by that time has been significantly compromised. And that's my feeling about otherwise the suggestions made by staff, I think, are very good ones. And I endorse what's been suggested and appreciate the time staff has put in to put this together. I think it makes a lot of sense.
I'll go next. Ken, did you have any thoughts on a 4 o'clock start time?
Yeah, it just makes it easier, I think, for us when we're a little bit fresher and a little bit less hungry. No, it's just I don't know what other people experience, but when we're running late and I start to get hungry, I know I'm just wanting to quickly get through business, and that's not the right attitude to have. And I realize that, and that's why I think starting earlier makes more sense.
So I'll weigh in. I'm going to agree with Dan that item 9, additional discussion items, I don't think we have to have that, because I think the agenda approval is a reminder at every meeting. If there's something burning that we forgot to add, we can bring it up and request it be added. So I think you can strike 9. 4 o'clock for me raises some issues because my son, when I've got him, comes home right around 3 o'clock, around 3:30. So that will limit my ability to talk to him before the meeting starts. But I'm willing to do that because I generally agree that later meetings, I think our energy isn't at the highest. And I'm gonna go with Ken used the word that for me is a big word with PUD, and that's professionalism. And I think having some, I'll call them targets of time allotments for how long we expect things to take would be good. It's a reminder for staff to think about how big an item is. Is it the right time to bring it up at a meeting? How long will it take? And to look at the whole meeting agenda as something that we've got to get through. And if they got too many big things and something doesn't have to be on there, it's a reminder that maybe this one should be saved for the next meeting. At the same time, I agree with Dan that we need to be able to do the people's business. And if we are on a topic and we've got a hot conversation going, I don't see us saying, oh, sorry, time's up. We got to stop. I think, even if we have time limits in there or goals to be moving along at certain times, we can extend those in a meeting. I guess that would be my thought. But I think having some goals and expectations of trying to get out of there in a reasonable amount of time, I would be okay with that.
If I can comment, I'm okay with a hard stop after 3 hours. I can go from 4 to 7 comfortably, and that's not that is not including necessarily an executive session, but our executive sessions are usually, because of the requirement to state the time, we're much more time conscious in the executive sessions. And I would think that 3 hours is more than adequate to accomplish the PUD's business.
So I think I'm hearing some compromises there. I'm seeing 3 hours now, which is the first. I've seen 2 and 2.5 hours written down here and discussed. So I'm not opposed to trying to shoot for 3 hours. Again, this kind of falls with staff. They have a lot of issues that come last minute. There are issues that change from the time that the agenda goes out. New items get added. So again, I'd like to hear from staff a little bit before I open it up to the public on their feelings about some of this. Again, if we recall at the beginning of the year, the manager came to us and said, hey, we want to cut down on the amount of meetings we're having. And so our meetings may run longer. And these 2 meetings a month, these are our compulsory regular scheduled meetings that we can only meet as a board, to discuss these items. We don't necessarily have the ability like other boards and commissions do because they have subcommittees or other things. They can, talk about issues and come forward with summaries or asking for guidance and things like that. We don't have that ability. These 2 meetings need to be for the public, for us to be transparent and accessible. And if it takes 4 hours, it takes 4 hours. But I'm willing to, look at starting earlier and, maybe starting with a 3-hour cap and, as a test period and see where it goes. So with that, Kevin, does staff want to weigh in at this point before I throw it to the commissioners one more or to the public?
Yeah, I would like to weigh in. I believe the 4 o'clock time frame helps us. I think the reorganization and the real conscious effort to say, okay, let's make these meetings as productive as we can. Let's try to step through them in an orderly fashion. I think those are things that help everybody. And I will agree, a couple of our meetings get very long, and at the end of the meetings, I know we're not as productive as we are at the start of the meetings. So I like the idea. I'm hesitant to put times on everything, but I think if we can work through as a team and say, okay, let's try to keep things as concise as we can, I think that just helps everybody and we can accomplish the goals to keep our meetings to the business that needed and then just move forward. So I like the change.
Don McDaniel.
I'm sorry, one last comment.
Go ahead,
I agree that item 9 on the proposed agenda can be dropped. I don't think towards the very end of the meeting is the time to get into additional discussion items when there is the opportunity to amend the agenda at the beginning of the meeting.
Go ahead, Don.
So it's interesting because most boards go through this very same discussion that we're having here tonight. I've gone through 3 boards here. We've all had the same discussion. I've served on a lot of boards that have had that discussion. And regardless of the agendas or start or stop times, it really boils down to personal time management. How much debate do you need? Have you covered this topic? Do we need to move along? And I think, just the acknowledgement that our meetings are longer and making sure that we're as concise as possible in the debate and discussion we have, that in itself, I believe, will improve this agenda, improve the meeting times. Not uncommon to go through this.
Thanks, Don. Any other commissioner response or staff response? All right, Jessica.
Yes, thanks again for letting me speak to this. My experience has been that the meetings that tend to be exceedingly long typically include a presentation by a consultant or some other outside source. And I mean, I think the FCS presentation went on for about an hour and 30 minutes. So although I know Kevin wants to have fewer meetings, it might be better for the Board of Commissioner meetings, the regular meetings, to not include lengthy presentations and have those be presented at a special meeting. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. Yeah, that plays back to the more meetings or fewer meetings discussion. And I think the commissioners are probably, speak with the manager, on their own about that along the way here. Go ahead, Kevin.
I will say, and this is just a statement, it is hard to schedule meetings, not only with our board, but with consultants and everyone else. So sometimes our only option is the evening meetings that are scheduled a year in advance. So scheduling of meetings is an art with us and our consultants. So, and I give Annette a lot of credit here trying to make dates work, but sometimes, and usually with consultants, we prefer to have them during the daytime because that's when they prefer to have them. But with scheduling and trying to do it in a timely fashion, it's tough with consultants. But I agree with Jessica. We should try as hard as possible to do it during the daytime.
Thanks, Kevin. So again, I'm willing to try some stuff here and, be pragmatic and see how it works out. We'll get to it in a second here, but ultimately, the public in particular has gotten used to us doing business a certain way. I have 4 more months of facilitating as president, and then Commissioner Collins will take over. Regardless of what we do here, I am going to make sure that our meetings are transparent, that we vet the issues. Everyone has a chance to add to the dialogue. And so I just want to keep that in mind. As long as I'm facilitating, we will take the time to vet issues and have the discussions. So with that, commissioners, do any other comment, or do we want to talk about the couple of items we kind of have consensus on, like the 4 o'clock start? I think obviously item 9 is gone, and maybe a 3-hour cap for staff to try and work that, into the process here. What do you think?
I think that that's a good start.
Yeah, I'm fine with that too.
So Kevin, staff, you guys got the direction you're looking for?
Yes, we will bring something back next meeting. Just again, a tentative agenda, something to look at and talk about, and it will be under old business. So thank you.
And so I have one question. Maybe this is a Joel question, because we're changing our historic 5 o'clock every the odd Mondays start. Do we need to work into this gradually and post that we're going to make that change before we actually do it for a while, or how's the process there for changing these compulsory meetings?
Well, the meetings, you set every year, you set when your regular meetings are to be. I think you'll want to have some sort of formal notice on the website and to, the local newspapers that provide it, that you are changing the start times of your meetings. And then you always timely post for your agendas and the like. I don't sometimes it's nice to have formal motion on this, but I don't think the commissioners are required to have a motion in this regard. You can start your next meeting at 4 o'clock as long as you provide enough notice to, the public and the newspapers the way we would normally.
Joel, I
Kevin.
don't know. I thought this was something that would possibly have to happen at the start of the year before we posted our year
Your yearly ones. Okay.
calendar. I don't know that. I just.
All right. Let me double check. I'm not sure that's the case, but let me double
hope
check
not.
if there's a requirement.
Thank you.
Happy to do that, Kevin.
Yeah, I would say we definitely not try this for the next meeting. And then our next meeting after that is actually going to be the hearing, the Monday meeting, which is another compulsory type of meeting. So I see the next two meetings, that's not changing our normal routine. So we're looking at the, second meeting of October at the earliest we would even consider this, assuming legal weighs in that, this is the way to do it. So I guess we're all on the same page there then. Does that sound right to everybody? All right, any other further comments on item 5.3 with the changing of the agenda format and the time for the meetings? All right, with that, we will move on to item 5.4, calendaring. I know Kevin already hit part of it here. Did you have more, Kevin? You're muted.
We need to set some additional meetings for September, October, November. This discussion's coming up. We are going to try not to do any special meetings in December. It is very difficult to schedule them in. A couple of the meetings that we really need to do is another broadband meeting. We also need to schedule a meeting where Mike Bailey will present to you the RESP loan application and how we have to submit that to RUS. So there's a couple key meetings that Annette, by the end of this week, she'll sit down and send out calendar requests to all the commissioners. We try to do it on the Tuesday opposite the board meeting. If it doesn't work, we just need the commissioners to come back as soon as possible so that we can throw the next day out there. A lot of times it could be, well, it works for everyone if we do it in the afternoon. Most of these meetings we try to schedule them 10 to 12. If that tentatively is not a good time frame, let us know, but that's what Annette will be sending out. And we're just looking for a quick response because we do have some time frames with the RUS loan and all those that we just have to make sure we don't lose out on opportunities. So that will happen in the next couple of days where Annette will send a big calendar invite, and please let us know as soon as you can what days do, and then we'll schedule things and bring it back to the next BOC meeting for the public.
Well, I'm just going to throw it out there. We belong to a lot of different organizations and groups, and we kind of know what their schedules are. Those meeting times and dates haven't changed. And I would throw it out there that really Fridays, we have to probably get a little more aggressive at using Fridays. I think that's probably the day it's the least conflict with other places we need to be and other organizations that we're working with. So I just got to throw that out there.
We looked at that today, Dan, on a Friday because it does seem to work on some instances. So.
All right. Anything else with calendaring and future meetings? Any questions? I'm not seeing any hands, nothing in the chat. All right. That concludes manager and staff reports. We will move on to item number 6. Old business. For the old and new business section discussions, please hold public comment until each presentation is done, but before the board takes a vote. So with that, we will move on to 6.1, wastewater rates.
Okay, Sam, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Hi, good evening, commissioners. I am just going to step through the agenda report just to kind of give an overview, and then we can open it up for questions if that format works for you. I do not have a formal presentation this time besides what's already in the agenda packet. So we're here tonight to update the wastewater sewer rate schedule through a resolution. And staff is recommending that the Board of Commissioners adopt the proposed wastewater and sewer rates as shown in the Exhibit A, which is the rate schedule that's in the packet. So PUD has been working with FCS consultants to complete a cost of service analysis and a rate design for all of the PUD utilities. FCS presented the revenue requirements and multiple rate design scenarios, which would enable the PUD to start to bring up the wastewater and sewer utility up to a cost of service, in addition to making progress for that utility to be a standalone utility. And so through a few past meetings and discussions, the proposed wastewater sewer rates were changed from a postage stamp model into 3 separate rates. The rates being 1, a standard rate, 2, a Beckett Point rate, and 3, a Calla Point rate. Also, the 3 different rate classes were shown to show a phase-in of getting to a cost of service of a 3-year, a 5-year, a 7-year, and a 10-year time period. During the August 17th, 2021 Board of Commissioners meeting, the recommendation was to provide for the 5-year phase-in option, and that is what is presented in the Exhibit A. And so the rate increase would allow the wastewater and sewer utility to start to meet revenue requirements and to provide a very modest capital improvement plan. And so that concludes the formal presentation portion. And I'm happy to answer any questions or if we want to revisit old presentations too. So I will stop here.
So
If
this
I-
is a, go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, if I can comment, I had a phone discussion this afternoon, and I understand that there's a committee at Beckett Point that had been formed to represent Beckett Point residents, and that they were hoping for a dialogue with the PUD on these rates. And hearing from Bill County, reminding us that we had promised at a meeting a few years ago to continue speaking with them directly about any rate changes. I want to make a recommendation that we postpone, if there is no hard and fast requirement to vote on the rates this evening, that we plan on meeting either in person or virtually with representatives from Beckett Point as well as Calla Point, and give the people who are going to be affected by the rate changes an opportunity to not simply weigh in, but also to understand from our perspective why these kinds of changes to the rates are necessary.
Jeff, go ahead.
I'm just going to chime in that I think the unique nature of the process we've gone through and the limited number of people who've been able to participate in the meetings we've had to date, I think some outreach now before we put these into effect would be warranted, especially since we have 2 really identified groups that are being treated differently than the others. And I would support that.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with transparency and dialogue unless staff has something to add here. I know there's somewhat of a sense of urgency on these increases because we're falling further behind with every passing day on these systems. So that's the first piece of information we need to give those 2 groups, is that this is not a new problem. This is a long-standing progression that has got us to this point of needing to take action. So I guess you got some consensus there, staff, if you want to weigh in.
So what I'm hearing, and I want to make sure real clearly, what I'm hearing is as staff, we're going to present the rates that this is what the board is proposing. This is what staff's recommendation to the board is. This is really where the numbers need to be based on FCS, and we'll go through those things. Because prior to this, we didn't know where we were going to end up with in timeframes, rates, and those things. So I think as staff, we're comfortable presenting this as, okay, this is, I'm going to use 95% complete. They can have input. We can revisit them. But this is really the recommendations from staff to the board. Okay.
Yeah, and as part of that, Kevin, just to be, a little clear here, I think part of that information, when if you're going to use the, the FCS slides in the presentation, is to emphasize, those are also water customers. They're not just sewer customers, and this impacts the water division and the water budget. These rates will, because the water system is going to subsidize this phase-in process to the tune of $400,000 a year for a 3-year plan and $800,000 a year in subsidies from the water to do the 5-year plan. So there's some more information that definitely needs to be put forward when we talk to these other groups. That's part of what's in the decision-making process. All right, so at this point, we will, unless staff or legal has anything to add, we will, or consultant, Dawn, anyone else, we will open it up for any public comments on this particular item, now that you've heard what the board has instructed staff to do. Bill County, 3 minutes, Bill.
Hi. Well, I'm glad that you're going to do this meeting. 4 years ago, you said that you would track costs for a year and then base your rate raises on your actual costs at Calla Point. And so I urge you in this meeting to try to tie these proposed raises to actual costs that have occurred at Calla Point. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Anyone else? I'm not seeing any hands, nothing in the chat. And we still have a couple phone in. One of them looks like staff. Will, is there anybody on the phone?
Dan?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I can't see. John Anderson has his hand up.
And Kevin Camfield has his hand up too.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead. They're not showing up on my screen. So which was the first?
I think Kevin.
Kevin identified earlier in the comment period that he wanted to talk, so I let him go first.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I just want to thank you for considering, give us a chance to engage with you. As Ken and I talked today, we have had an active committee out at Becker Point for about 6 months, trying to basically get educated on our system costs, both annual maintenance, as well as trying to look forward to what some of the long-term capital costs might be. We've been trying to put our hands on some of the contracts that describe our relationship and ownership of that system. And we've been working really just to get educated so that we could come and have an intelligent conversation with you all. And we're just in the process of drafting a letter from our president saying this group's going to come talk to you when we found out about the rate increase. And we did know that you guys were talking about general rate increases. Unfortunately, we didn't understand that you were talking about changing the rate class and making us a unique class. So, and that in part is our fault, but we do appreciate you taking the time to have those conversations with us, and we look forward to them.
Thanks, Kevin. And I would say to the public, we record the meetings. Our last meeting, obviously, I think we discussed this. I don't know all the agendas. I think we discussed it a couple times. It might help you before staff gets with you to go back and listen to the audio, of previous meetings, look at the agendas and see where this item has been on there, presentations by FCS, and that would help you guys be more prepared when staff comes forward as well. Might be a little more efficient to do that. So with that, who was the other person that was I missing here?
John
Anderson.
Can you hear me?
Not quite.
Well, I'm trying to yell as loud as I can. My
That's good.
computer sound doesn't work too well.
Yeah, I think
But
the
I was-
closer you get, might be the better.
Okay. What I would like to request, I agree with Kevin and want to thank you very much for having this opportunity for us to get together. But I'm hoping once we've established that meeting date, if there is some either written information or summary of the consultant's recommendations, if there's an easy way for us to access that information before the meeting so that we can come prepared with our questions. So if someone could either reach out to me or if I know who to contact, I can start that process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. So Kevin, do you want to, are you going to instruct Will or someone? And you have an idea how you want to approach that? Are
As
you
staff,
muted,
as staff will meet tomorrow and we'll put something together and do a little outreach to Kevin and John and Bill, and at least get some things tentatively scheduled. I will say it will probably be a Zoom meeting if possible.
Okay, so it sounds like everybody has had their question answered, and we're going to leave it with staff for the moment. Or is there anything else regarding the wastewater rates at this time? Again, I'm not seeing the hands, Will, on mine. I didn't see John show up, so you guys be sure and holler there if I'm missing somebody, because I'm not getting everybody's hand. I see Bill County's hand is still up, but that's the only hand I've seen for this whole discussion here. So with that, we will move on to item 6.2, the wholesale telecommunications service agreement. I imagine Lori Ray.
I will probably take this one. And Lori will, I can't tell if she's on or not, but she will jump in as I make either a bad statement or not a statement. So this is just strictly a wholesale agreement that probably should have been in place 5-6 years ago when we started in the business as a wholesaler. This agreement really puts some definite priorities between the PUD and the retail service provider. If you look in the agreement, it's a little confusing because typically we say an ISP. In the agreement, it's an RSP, a retail service provider. So there's a little clarification there. I'm not going to go through the whole contract. It's been gone through by legal. It's gone through Doug Dawson. I will say this, I spent some time on the contract today, and we need to go through, and there's some run together words, some additional language or edits that need to be done to the document. So tonight, really all we're talking about is for the board to review it. We will bring it back at a future agenda once we fix some of the spelling and some of the run-on words. We'll bring it back. There is one thing, though, that I would like to bring to your attention out of the whole document. Actually, two things. This agreement has a 30-day termination clause, which we can pull out or they can pull out. That's very important. And then I'm going to direct you 62 of the packet, or page 4 of 12. It's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraph down says, because the RSP is responsible for retail customers, the district wishes to avoid direct correspondence, verbal or written. Really, we do a lot of hand holding, and we actually have reached out to the customer to find out where it actually goes in the building and stuff like that. To me, this is one thing that is very important, but it will make a difference to some of the RSPs that we presently deal with, because we have done that in the future. when we are connecting hundreds of people in these big grant block areas, we can't be doing that hand holding. And that is, of all of this, that really sticks out to me, that is a very important paragraph. And it is gonna make it so that our people aren't going to every business, every home, every customer, and having to deal with them on where it connects and those kind of issues. Unless we are the ISP. If we're the ISP, then we are responsible to do that. We're not responsible to do that to the RSP. And there's a difference there. So I'm throwing that out. We will bring it back next meeting after some editing. If there's any questions, I can answer them now, or Lori can.
Thanks, Kevin. So yeah, also on the exhibit, like you said, a lot of spacing issues on the word. But I was curious because it didn't say draft anywhere on it. And you mentioned there are a couple things you pointed out. It would help, you know, if we see a blue or a red line sometimes. I assume this was the same one we looked at. I didn't have the time to research it, compare it, you know, with previous ones that had come forward, even though I realized they were mostly wholesale, right? And this one's more aimed at retail to a certain extent, correct?
This one's wholesale. The first one you saw was residential.
Okay, that's what it
so,
was, residential.
Yeah.
So again, and without draft on it, you know, and redlining that sort of thing in future, if you're going to come out with more iterations of this, that would be a little helpful.
Okay.
Anyone else? I'm not seeing any. Oh, Tom Tiersch. Tom,
Okay.
3 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, I was reading through the proposed wholesale telecom agreement, and the Scrivener errors notwithstanding, I have a couple of, or basically one concern. Should there be some vetting of the RSP, of a new RSP, for example, to make sure that they're a real business, that they're a going venture? You know, are they, do they have a decent credit rating? Do they have sufficient capital to fund their proposed operations? The issue is we wouldn't want an underfunded, undercapitalized RSP to begin serving customers only to have them fold up quickly, you know, leaving customers in the lurch with no service and possibly having lost money. A lot of companies will offer people deals like pay a year in advance to get a reduced rate. And then the company folds and whoops, there's that money gone. So as I said, I think there might be some added language in there about making sure that RSPs that sign up are actually qualified to be good RSPs for PUD customers. So that's the issue I wanted to raise. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. Anyone else? Not seeing anything in chat. I'm not seeing any hands. Anybody see any other hands? All right, so staff's gonna take this back for some cleanup and maybe a couple changes I'm hearing. I don't know. I'll leave it to staff on how they want to take Tom's comments there, whether they agree with that or not. Other than that, any other discussion on this item, the wholesale telecommunications service agreement? Seeing and hearing none, we will move on to item, well, actually, that's it for old business. We'll move on to new business. And again, these new business is first touch. So I don't know that we'll necessarily be looking for action tonight. For the old and new business section discussions, please hold public comment until each presentation is done, but before the board would take any votes. And I don't necessarily anticipate any votes here, but we'll see what staff thinks. Go ahead, Kevin. Olympic water and sewer.
I'm going to turn this over to Sam, and I know I saw her. Yeah, Sam, jump in here.
Okay, good evening. For this one is an amendment number 2 to a Olympic water and sewer wastewater agreement with the PUD. So staff is recommending that the Board of Commissioners authorize the general manager to sign amendment number 2 for the agreement for assumption of operation and maintenance of a wastewater treatment and collection facilities. So the original agreement was signed between the PUD and Ludlow Utility Company. Currently, it's Olympic Water and Sewer, Inc. And that was executed on December 9th of 1986. The agreement was intended to have the PUD assume operations of the wastewater treatment plant and wastewater collection systems if one of the following occurrences happened. That there was a requirement to implement an approved general sewer plan. If Olympic Water and Sewer for any reason ceased to operate and maintain the system and there was no successor, or if number 3, if the discharge of the treatment facility was in violation of a final effluent limitations in the Port Ludlow waste discharge permit over an extended period of time of at least 4 to 6 months consecutive, or if Olympic Water and Sewer failed to comply with any other permit requirements for at least 6 years. So one of the following had to occur for the PUD to step in. The agreement also describes how the transfer of the operation and maintenance would transpire if one of the above occurrence happened, what it is and what is not included in the operation and maintenance. And some of those things were what the PUD would bill for and what was still under control of the Ludlow at the time of the Ludlow Utility Company. So it went through all of those possibilities. And so in amendment number 1 was executed on February 7th of 2000. And it include minor changes. Olympic Utility Company became Olympic Water and Sewer, Inc. And also the PUD, one of the requirements per the WAC is the PUD had to adopt the general sewer plan for the Olympic Water and Sewer, Inc. And then also the extension of the agreement terms. So the intent of the agreement is to put in place a backup for the operation and maintenance of the Olympic Water and Sewer, Inc. wastewater treatment plant and collection facility if one of the occurrence above takes place. And under RCW 54-16-230, the PUD may acquire, construct, operate, and maintain and add to sewage facilities. So it basically is saying that we are capable of doing this. And then WAC 173-240-104 allows for private ownership of a domestic sewer facility, provided that it has an agreement in place with a public agency. And so outlined for the facts and findings, what's provided in the new agreement number 2 is the following. It clarifies who collects development fees versus monthly billing fees. It was a little unclear, at least to me, and I went over this with Greg Ray at Olympic Water and Sewer, Inc. If a new customer comes in, that is handled differently than if it is a monthly O&M bill that the PUD would provide to the Olympic Water and Sewer, Inc. customers. So that was clarified in amendment number 2. There's also clarifications on the expenses incurred by the PUD to provide operations and maintenance of the system. And then it was extended for additional 20-year period. And so the expiration date would be 2046. And so our recommendation is that the Board of Commissioners would authorize the GM to sign amendment number 2 to the amendment for assumptions of operation and maintenance facility of the wastewater treatment plant and collections. Sorry, that's a very long recommendation. So if there's any questions, it's a lot to take in one agenda item, but if there's any questions to the agreement, I would be happy to answer as best I can.
So Samantha's Commissioner Cooper, because, the holiday weekend and the packet came out late, and, this thing lapsed once. It's 35 years old on the original before the previous amendment. Now this amendment. I'm kind of curious. I had a question for you and then probably a question for Joel. I really would like to look at this a little longer rather than trying to push it forward tonight. I don't know that there's an urgency, but maybe staff wants to weigh in on that. Now, the question for you, Samantha, is this: has this been, have you taken this to county health and county planning or DCD and had them take a fresh look at this? Because there are some WACs involved and some other things involved with permitting and that sort of thing. And the comprehensive plan is called out. And I know the comprehensive plan's changed a lot in 35 years. Where are we at with, having the county in the loop on this?
I have not sent it to the county for review. The comp plan comes into play with the wastewater general plant plan, and making sure that it's in compliance with that is where I see that coming into play. But I have not ran the agreement by county health, and I would have to look to see what their involvement would be besides on the planning angle of the plan itself.
Thanks. And then, yeah, and then my question for Joel, and I don't know if Joel had a chance to review this or not, on the original agreement that was signed in '86, obviously the one amendment changed the Ludlow utilities to Alzy, but there's also a couple stipulations in there that reference Pope Resources. And one of those particularly has to do with them backing Alzy up financially. I forget what the term is. So is that something that we should be addressing in the original document as part of this new amendment, is to make sure of who exactly Alzy belongs to, answers to, et cetera, because there are, it says this agreement is conditioned on Pope Resources guaranteeing the promissory note in a form satisfactory to the PUD. That's page 86 of 105 of the packet. It's page 9 of the agreement. I'm just wondering if that's something that we should check on. In the off chance that we actually have to exercise this at some point. I'm hoping that necessarily we never come to that, but just in the off chance that we did.
I don't really know the answer to that sitting here right now, Commissioner. My conjecture though is that the original, Pope Resources was the developer for Port Ludlow. And it's fairly typical to require the developer to be on the hook for all of the utility systems that they install in a development like this, especially like this. And I think that the entity is the OW, I'm sorry, I don't have the acronym here.
It's Olympic Water and Sewer.
Yeah, Olympic Water and Sewer is the private company that assumed all the obligations from Port Ludlow. This is just my conjecture, I think. I think that's right. I see people nodding. And so I'm not sure if it matters whether Pope Resource, in terms of what this is trying to do, whether it matters we have performance bonds or not from Pope Resources. There is an entity here now that's operating this thing. So, but I'm happy to look into it in a little more detail to give you guys the comfort you want. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd be a little more comfortable if we looked into this maybe a little bit on the two issues I brought up. And I know Lori Ray has, I'm going to bypass you, Commissioner Collins, real quick, and maybe Lori Ray can add to what was just said right there.
Actually, I have Greg here, so I'll let him speak, okay?
Hello, Commissioners. I just wanted to clarify that actually that was an oversight on my part. It should have been cleaned up, and that should be Port Ludlow Associates. They are the owner of Olympic Water and Sewer now, and they are the ones that would be guaranteeing that. So yeah, Pope Resources is no longer, and it would be Port Ludlow Associates.
Thanks, Greg. Commissioner Collins, go ahead.
I'm looking at the first paragraph of the resolution, and to me, it reads awkwardly where it says authorizing the general manager to execute and approving amendment number 2. And it strikes me that if we authorize the general manager to execute the agreement, then we've implicitly approved amendment number 2. So I think that and the words "and approving" can be stricken from that paragraph, and it will still convey the same thought. And I guess that's maybe a Joel question, but that's what.
I don't disagree with that. It's a good edit. Yeah.
Thank you, Counselor.
So again, I'm thinking maybe we should get another look at this. That it should probably come back as old business before we get too far down the rabbit hole here, just to make sure the i's are dotted, the t's are crossed, and we're up to speed.
And Commissioner Tupper, I'm sorry, I know the one issue you wanted to address was the role of Pope resources. I think we have a little more information on that, but we can do that more thoroughly. And just the second issue you raised, just to remind me.
It was with county health on the comp plan.
Oh,
how
okay,
this-
okay.
Because
Got
we're
it.
starting to make amendments and a lot of time has passed.
All right.
And
Yeah,
I'm
between,
happy to do that one, Joel.
all right, thanks, Sam.
I'll
Yeah,
work with
we're
Greg.
happy to do that.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ken, your hand's still up. Was that from last time or? All right, so is there any other questions on the
Yeah, I have a
Olympic water?
question.
Okay, go ahead, Roger, 3 minutes.
Thanks. First question, if OWSI defaults, let's say they just walk, do we have to take over the water system too? That's not in the plan. And where would the water come from? Second question, do the ratepayers in Port Ludlow still have the protection of the WUTC with regard to rates? Because we're not acquiring that facility, we're just running it. Another question, why aren't we using the LUD process here? Another question is, could we please see the general sewer plan in writing for the next meeting? And also, I'm skeptical about some of the provisions, like OWSI keeping the development fees. I think the only development left in the resort is commercial development. I think some of that commercial development is actually owned by OWSI, where they would be paying the fees to themselves. And in commercial developments, that's a lot of money. I guess my comment would be that sewer plant is going to need replacing within the life of the agreement. And it's an aging system. The water system may be questionable too. I think there's a Superfund site involved there. I think we should be very careful that on what we do here. It looks to me like an attempt to impose a public service burden on the PUD and its ratepayers. I'll drop it at that. Thanks.
Thanks, Roger. There's an indemnification clause in there that I think probably covers some of what you're talking about. This is an emergency type of a thing. If they were in non-compliance and failure, that we would step in to help. We wouldn't actually necessarily even be taking it for a long term. We would take it short term, and they would have the ability to actually take it back from us again. So again, there's a lot there. You're right, Roger. I had some of the same concerns, but I didn't have time. I don't know, Roger. I got your 3 minutes up though. So if you want to follow up with us offline, I'd say that's the way to go right now on this, because it is going to go back to staff. And so maybe forward any of your comments, to the staff and commissioners, so that we're all on the same page.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Roger. So anyone else want to add anything? Jeff, go ahead.
I had a question that I'm glad Roger brought that up. It's really clear that the operational responsibility is separate from the ownership of the facility. And I'm just kind of wondering if staff, and again, realizing this is only triggered in an event that the OWSI doesn't want to have happen in the first place, but what would happen to ownership? Would the PUD eventually become the owner of it? And then the second question I've got is, I know that when we take over failing water systems, oftentimes that comes with money from the state. If we have to take over operation of the sewer plant, could that also come with money from the state?
Thanks, Jeff. Who's that aimed at? Is that aimed at Joel or staff or
whoever on staff can handle
or
it?
Greg Ray?
Yeah.
I'll defer if Greg Ray's still on the call. If he wants to tackle any of this, I'm going to leave the forum.
I'm
open to him as
ducking.
well.
Okay.
If there are funds available for failing water and sewer systems, not saying that the PUD would get the money, but there are funds at times available for that process. So whether we would would be successful in getting the money, I don't know.
Well, I guess the second question is that that issue of the ownership being separate from the operational responsibilities. You know, I don't quite understand that. And maybe that's just the law doesn't extend that far. The law is trying to deal with a problem and wants somebody to step in and run it. And the issue of ownership is a separate issue, but how would that get resolved? And maybe this is all too tenuous that we don't need to get into it because it's a what if in the first place. But I'm just kind of curious if there's any answers on that.
So Greg Ray, I think you're still online.
Yes, actually, we're doing this because we're actually looking at doing updates to our sewer plan, and we want to make sure that we're in compliance with the state. So we have totally no intentions of letting this treatment plant go into the state of repair that would cause this to be enacted. So, you know, that's our side of it. We're looking at the future and trying to get our plant upgraded right now. And you know, it's not like a bailout for us. We just want to have all our ducks in the row when we go to the state, and you know, show them our plans for upgrading our treatment plant. So no, I think that it's not a thing where it's a Hail Mary or anything like that. We're definitely looking to the future and keeping our plan in compliance. And that's our motivation behind this whole agreement. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. We want to be good partners and good neighbors. We don't want to see you fail either. So, you know, and there's not a lot of monetary involvement here by the PUD at this point. And like I say, this is kind of the backup plan for if things go south for you guys. Roger did bring up a couple quick points that we probably should use as background too, as we look into this a little more. And one is the separation of the water and sewer there. If something were like this were to transpire, you know, what are the legalities there, you know, as ownership versus operation? And the water, you have to have the water to have the sewer. So there is some sort of synergy or ties between the two. We might need to know a little bit more about that, you know, not necessarily to sign this agreement, but to have a better idea for the board and staff and everybody of, you know, what exactly would it be entailed if this did get, you know, initiated. And the other is also the UTC. If we have the sewer and they have the water, you know, the UTC, the PUD is not under the purview of the UTC. So how exactly does that work? That was kind of an interesting question or quandary there, and maybe I'm, you know, making it more difficult than it is, but it seems to me that could be problematic. So that's one more thing maybe Joel might want to look at with other entities that have gone through something like that. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, actually, the water, we keep the water and sewer separate. We have to, for UTC regulations, we have to keep them completely separate. I mean, we have employees that work in both, but we keep their time and everything separate from each other. And the sewer plant is not regulated by the UTC, so that's something that, and I don't really know how to say it. It's just it's a separate entity almost, but we're still the same company. It's hard to explain. The UTC is definitely regulating the water. We're totally regulated by them. And if you know, it's hard for me to wrap my mind around OWSI failing. So to speak to how, if we did fail, this would all be separated, I'm not sure. I haven't even really given that a thought before. It just hasn't come into my mind. So that's about what I have on that, Dan.
Yeah, and I guess Greg, I'll just follow up that sewer is sewer, water is water, and you know, if the UTC has no role in what we do. It definitely oversees private companies, and you know, just isn't relevant to us. And I don't see it relevant to this circumstance, actually, because sounds like it may never happen, but if it did happen, then we would take it over. It would be our system and we wouldn't be regulated by the UTC. They would lose just, it would be the reverse. Well, it would be the same as when we took over the electric system. You know, the exact
Required
same.
that.
The UTC used to regulate PSC and all its rates and contracts and everything. And once the PUD bought it, took it over, you got the job. That's your job. That's how it would work.
Thanks, Joel. Go ahead, Jeff.
I just wanted to, just curious if there is a time urgency on this, do we need to adopt it tonight or authorize the manager to sign it tonight, or can it be deferred to the next meeting?
We can bring it back. I will point out, we kind of got off track here a little bit. We have other agreements similar to this where if systems fail, we have an obligation to the state, our community, and everyone else to step in. And that's what we're talking about here, is the obligation to step in during extreme circumstances and help make them right. So to me, that's the gist of what we're talking about here. It's our obligation as part of the community to do this. So,
So thanks, Kevin.
And just to
Back to
piggyback
Samantha.
on what Kevin just mentioned, at least in my reading of the agreements, we're more of the fix to get OWSI back on track. It would be a different process in my mind if we were actually in the position or needed to take over the system. This is more of, we're here for a finite period of time until they can get back on track, is how, well, that's the intent that I got from this agreement.
Thanks, Samantha. So are there any other questions on item 7.1 Olympic Water and Sewer Agreement? We expect to see it back on the next agenda then. All right, I'm not seeing any hands or chat. So with that, we will move on to item 7.2, the Meadows Phase 2 Sewer Agreement. And is this Samantha again?
Yes. So you're making me nervous though. So, but we're going to go for it anyway. So, yes. So this is the Meadows Phase 2 Operation and Maintenance Agreement. The staff is requesting that the board authorize the general manager to execute an operation and maintenance service agreement for Phase 2 of the Meadows Community On-Site Septic System between the PUD and the developer STO LLC. So on November 19th, 2019, which seems like a really long time ago, but we had a meeting to approve and execute the first phase of the Meadows, and we are their on-site, their O&M provider for the on-site community septic for Phase 1. STO LLC purchased the property and formed the Meadows Community Condominium Number 1 and the Meadows Condominium Number 2. The large on-site septic community was divided into 2 phases, and there is a map attached. If Will would so nicely bring up the map, it would be helpful during the talk. Thank you, Will. The large on-site septic, so the first phase is broken into 21 permitted sewer connections, with 8 of the family were existing single family residents, and there was 13 vacant parcels. And now this Phase 2 will include 28 new lots that are currently vacant. And under here is Jefferson County's code of 8.15.100 parentheses 2 that allows the PUD to manage community on-site septic systems, which are approved by environmental health. And the Meadows Phase 2 large on-site septic system is permitted. In this case, this one is permitted through Washington State Department of Health, and it's currently under construction. Whereas the past one we did, it was already complete by the time we entered into an operation and maintenance agreement with them. So staff has been working with the property owners on the terms and operation and maintenance agreement. The agreement is structured as a service contract, since the PUD does not own the system, but is contracted to provide the O&M and maintenance of the on-site septic system. The PUD bills to a single customer, which is the Meadows Number 1 association, rather than each individual individual lot. We have a monthly fee currently, and our most current schedule of charges for the water and sewer systems, which was adopted through resolution 2020-005. And so, and this is structured very similarly to our phase one system or O&M agreement that you all saw in 2019. And so thank you, Will. I appreciate. So in the green on the map attached are all the new phase two large on-site septic lots, and the orange section is where the new drain field is being constructed to accommodate these new lots. And I just wanted to open it up for any questions.
So it's Commissioner Tupper. So the new drain field, and it states here obviously that the rates are the existing schedule of charges, and that meets the cost of what's going to happen there. There isn't going to have to be any increases there, or what is the fine? It says there's no fiscal impact other than the rates they already charge them.
We can review our rates in general for operation and maintenance, but but so far on phase one, we've met what we needed to with the operation and maintenance agreements, and I can check in with Randy again to make sure, but they were updated recently.
Thanks, Samantha. Ken Collins, go ahead, Ken.
Yes. So where exactly is this development located?
It's in downtown, downtown Port Hadlock area, just south of 116.
Kind of back behind the old, or where Farino's is, Ken, towards the swamp area there, back towards the section, is it section 8 housing?
Correct, yes,
Just
behind
west of
Farino's
that.
and the vet. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Anyone else? Ken, your hand's still up. I'm not seeing anybody at the moment, nothing in chat, nothing on my participant list. So we do have a resolution tonight. Again, I hate to get into the habit of seeing things kind of for the first time in new business and taking action. But if there's no objections, there's no glaring issues here, I suppose I'd entertain a motion to accept the resolution that as it was put forward tonight for the manager to go ahead and do what he needs to do with this. Still not seeing any comments, so.
I'll move that we approve a resolution authorizing the general manager to execute an operations and maintenance service agreement for phase 2 of the Meadows Community On-Site Septic System.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? And this is an extension of what we're already doing there. This is phase 2. So I don't have any objections at this point. Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
There you go. That resolution is accepted. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks, Sam, for all the work you guys are doing there on the water side. Is there anything else there? No, we're on to commissioner reports. Jeff, you want to go?
Sure. Let's see, get to the right page here. On the 19th of August, the EDC Team Jefferson board met and we discussed where they are at in terms of seeking new board members. And they formed a subcommittee. They've got a couple of applications in. I think they're trying to get the word out to get a few more applications to look at. Subcommittee will review the applicants and then invite the folks to come in and be in front of the full board before action is taken. So I don't think there's going to be, our next meeting is on, I believe it's it's not the 23rd. I can't get my calendar up quickly, but the next meeting is coming up later this month. And I don't think we're going to be appointing people that quickly. I think that's going to take a little longer. There are 4 finalists for the executive director position. And we're trying to set up some dates right now in October to interview those 4 finalists. 3 of the 4 are Jefferson County residents, and a couple of them are leading candidates. And we've got a Google Drive with their resumes and essays that they've submitted in terms of what they would do. And I don't know, Joel, if there's an issue with making those available to the other commissioners or not, but I can forward that if that's desired and okay. Let's see here. We should have draft bylaws in front of us at the next meeting, which basically all they do is incorporate by reference the multi-party agreement, which has a work plan and a lot of very specific requirements for the new team Jefferson EDC. So I think we're going to be acting on that those bylaw amendments at the next meeting. And that's my report. Oh, and I guess the last thing is we've got an IGC meeting on the 23rd, and I anticipate we'll probably spend some time talking about the EDC and the progress made, and we are going to be the hosts. So if you have things you'd like to talk about, I spoke to Kevin and suggested a couple things that we might consider related to this. I think that's a good opportunity to have some discussion with other public members on that EDC board. On the 23rd, I attended the joint meeting we had with the CAB. On the 26th, we had a NODC board meeting. On the 27th, had a meeting with Pam Petronic. On the 2nd, with Joel Paisner, and both those meetings were about the EDC. On the 13th, attended the special meeting, or I will be attending the special meeting that we're having on budget. The 15th through the 17th, the WAPUTA conference that's going to be virtual now. On the 23rd, the IGC meeting. And then on the 22nd through the 24th, the WAPUTA water workshop. And that's my report.
Thanks, Jeff. So quick question, and this is where we kind of get into that thorny ground on, what can go public and what can't. Kevin's obviously on one of the deciding panels on this director position. You are. How do Ken and I weigh in on this as to who we think the candidate should be? How does that work?
Well, I guess question for Joel or Kevin, is there an issue with sharing the link to the Google Drive that has those documents so that the other commissioners could take a look at the candidates?
I don't know the term. I mean, is this a public process that they're reviewing them?
Well, that's a whole other question about what is the EDC a public board, so it's right now they're saying they're considering themselves a nonprofit. So,
I'll tell you, I don't see any issue with you sharing that.
Okay.
Other than there's the risk that someone could ask for it, and if they ask for it, I'd need to get more information at that point.
Okay.
But it could be at risk of being disclosed. I mean, that's the only thing.
Right. So I guess I can go back and ask, is there any problem with sharing this link with other elected officials? Okay.
And then the other component of that is the three of us and Kevin is four to determine who we think that director should be. How do we come to a consensus on that?
Yeah.
At a public meeting.
Yeah.
So if I can weigh in, I think this is one of those instances where, having delegated certain responsibility to the participating commissioner, I am comfortable relying on your judgment, Jeff, to represent our Board of Commissioners and to make a determination as to who you think is the best candidate. I don't think it's necessary in where it's a remote situation to our Board of Commissioners for all of us to necessarily weigh in and to represent a consensus. I mean, there are reasons why boards have representatives and delegate authority. So I don't feel like this is something that, no, let me put it another way. I'm very comfortable relying on your judgment in representing me in deciding who you think is the best qualified candidate for the position.
Okay, let me ask just a follow-up question. If it is determined to be okay to share the resumes and other information. Would you be interested in that and just providing thoughts, or is that again a deferral? You prefer just to let me handle it and let you know how it all works out?
Well, go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I think you were addressing that to me. Again, I'm comfortable with your judgment on that. I might, out of curiosity, want to look at that information, but I don't feel that it's necessary to have a consensus among the Board of Commissioners as to who the best candidate is.
Okay, well, I will still follow up and find out if it can be shared. And if either of you are interested in looking at the documents, then we can find out what the ground rules would be about reviewing or talking about them outside the EDC's process, if that sounds okay to both of you.
Well, in full disclosure, Brian Koo gave me the list, I think, of the finalists. I don't know, it might have been 5 at the point that he gave me their resumes. So I've seen some of it. I haven't read all of it yet. I haven't had the chance. So just wanted you to know that. But the other part of the question is Kevin's on a separate board. What if you and Kevin disagree? It's kind of working at counter purposes. Again, it still brings me back to, this whole process seems kind of disjointed in certain ways about, how we all get to weigh in on what the representation is going to be. So maybe you and Kevin are on the same page.
Yeah, and I actually went through the multi-party agreement, which is long, is pretty specific about how this all works. And I look at and I'm going to probably get the name of it wrong. What's the group that you're on, Kevin? It's called the something.
Public Sector Cabinet.
Public Sector Cabinet. And the way I look at that is they're there to help administer the agreement, to make sure we're following it and so forth, but they really seem to be more of an adjunct to the staff. And the hiring of the executive director is clearly it's a board decision. But Kevin, I don't know if you want to weigh in on that or not.
The process is set up, though, the candidates are going to come in and be interviewed. And so that's why I think it has to rely on Jeff, because they're not going to bring everybody into the interview process. Now, so I think there are some things that we can do, some information that can be shared. But ultimately, I believe how it's set up is the selection committee that's in on the interviews will have the final say, not necessarily each board will have a say in the director. That is how it's set up. The representative will do the vote.
Right. And I will be one of, 13 currently board members making that, voting on that.
Thanks for that clarification. So with that, we'll move on to Commissioner Collins, unless there's any other questions.
On the 23rd, I participated in an executive committee phone call for the PUD Association. And in that phone call, we determined that both the upcoming conference in September for the PUD Association, as well as the water workshop, would need to be held virtually. It was a very tough decision. It was a painful decision for the organization, but given the low vaccination rates in Klickitat County, it just seemed like the prudent thing to do. I also participated in the special meeting with the Citizen Advisory Board the same day. On the 26th, I participated in the PERM's audit exit interview, and they came through the audit with flying colors. There were no findings, basically a totally clean audit, which is nice to know. On the 30th and 31st, I was on the phone with a number of Waputa members attempting to recruit budget committee, which I think has finally been fully constituted. The 1st of September, I listened into the Public Power Council Members Forum. I had a meeting on the 3rd with our general manager. Tomorrow, I will participate in the NOAANET board meeting. On the 10th, the Jefferson Broadband Action Team meeting. On the 14th, the special board meeting with Moss Adams on the budget, as well as on the 13th, I think I'm up to participate in the Citizen Advisory Board meeting. Don McDaniel, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm next in line.
That's been canceled, Ken.
Oh,
They're going to cancel it, so we'll move you ahead to the next dance.
well, then I won't show up for that.
Probably wouldn't be a good idea.
And I'm looking forward to the PUD Association meeting from the 15th through the 17th. And that's my report.
Thanks, Ken. So I attended the joint BOC and CAB meeting on the 23rd of August. I listened in on JeffCom on the 26th. There was nothing that pertained to the PUD at that meeting. I spoke with the general manager on the 30th. I attended the PPC members forum on the 1st of September. There were state utility commissioners from 4 Western states, and they talked about regional energy transfer objectives and challenges that'll be affecting the resource adequacy and the power markets in the West. I listened in on PPC Executive Committee on September 2nd. The 2022 PPC budget was accepted with presentation by Clark PUD on the effects that CETA will have on their River Road gas turbine generating plant. The CEO of PSE spoke about PSE projects that help their fuel mix portfolio. Batteries and microgrids in the Paulsbo and Bainbridge Island area were examples of pilot projects that they're pursuing. She also gave her thoughts on the future of energy production and transmission for the region over the next few decades from PSE's perspective and her own personal perspective. I meet with the manager on the 10th of September. Will be at the special meeting for budget on the 14th at noon, if I heard right earlier. And I will attend the virtual Waputa monthly meeting 15, 16, 17th of September. So with that concludes everything except for our executive session. And that's under RCW 42.30.110 parentheses 1 parentheses I to discuss with legal counsel potential litigation to which the PUD is likely to become a party. So is there a specific time we have in mind for this? And is there going to be any anticipated discussion or action after?
Joel, can you give us a time frame? No action after.
Oh, Kevin, is 10 minutes enough?
I would think so, unless there's questions, maybe 15.
15, let's say 12. My part it'll be more response. So let's say 12 minutes.
Okay, so with the 12 minutes, and before we do that, is there anything else, after the commission report, was there anyone else have any comments before we proceed on with the executive session? Just one last call in case people aren't coming back. I'm not seeing any hands and nothing in chat. So with that, it is 6:59. We're going to retire to executive session for RCW 4230.110 parentheses 1 parentheses I to consult with legal counsel on potential litigation which the PUD is likely to become a party. Will?
And Dan, you got a hand. Oh, you had a hand up from Melanie. Maybe she dropped it.
Is Melanie going to be in the executive session?
No, she will not.
Melanie, was there something you needed to weigh in with?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, sorry, that was a mistake. My apologies.
Okay, so it actually is 7 p.m. So Will, if you want to put everybody back in a waiting room and we'll go to executive session and stop the recording. for 12. So this is Dan Tupper. It is 7:12. We concluded our executive session. We're coming back into regular session. There's no discussion or action required, correct? Anyone? I'm seeing no heads in the affirmative, so we are not going to take any action or have any further discussion on executive session. With that, is there anything else for the good of the order? Seeing and hearing none, it is 7:13. We are adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Have a
Thanks.
nice
Good night.
evening.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Thanks, Will.
Bye.